Hello, everyone. It is the Prophet Michael David, aka Aries, and I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. Also, today is a very special day because today is Michaelmas, sometimes pronounced Michaelmas. September 29th is the day of Saint Michael, the Archangel Michael, my namesake. And hence the title of this video. This was the day that God wanted me to start to tell you how I became a prophet. I've alluded to the 32 or 36 days in 2021 before, but now we're going to go over them in three separate videos. And this first video is obviously named How I Became a Prophet. And then the subtitle is going to be Days 1 through 5. And so here we go. Okay, day one is February 28th, 2021. It would have been my parents' 45th anniversary had they not died on February 7th, 2018, in a horrible car crash that I spoke about before. But before we talk about day one, we have to talk about day zero, which was February 27th, 2021. And that is the last day that I ever spent the night at my ex-girlfriend friend's house, Angie, uh, Angelina Regina, um, who also has died in the past few years. Again, I spoke about that in the past. I'll speak about that in the future, but just not in this video. All right, here we go. So, on the morning of February 28th, 2021, which would have been my parents' 45th anniversary, I remember waking up at Angie's apartment and just being really angry. And it was like noticeable to her. And she asked me, Are you angry at me? And I said, No, of course I'm not angry at you. And she's like, Who are you angry at? Because you're obviously angry. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like angry at the entire entire world. And then I showed her some math stuff. Technically, I started getting some ideas on the 27th, but I'm like, I have like all these ideas running through my head, and you aren't a mathy person, and we were technically broken up. We were just F with B, or dating, whatever you want to call it. But I'm like, yeah, I just need some time to work on this math stuff. I got all these shapes and numbers running through my head. And so I drove back to my house and I started in on it. When I got home, almost instantly, my grandma, who I've talked with pretty much every week, every 2 weeks, along with my other grandma, both my mother's mother and my mother's father. But this is my grandma, my mom's mom. She called me up out of the blue, and she almost never does that. Just to remind me that it was February 28th, my parents' anniversary. And I will have to admit, up to that point, I did not realize that. I didn't even really do the math and know it was the 45th. So I talked to my grandma, and then I hung up, and then I started ferociously um, looking up math stuff, Riemann hypothesis, other stuff, doing work on paper, just for like 20 hours a day, manically. Smoking a lot of pot, drinking very little, but smoking a lot of pot, and just manically doing that over and over. So, day one, I finally went to bed around midnight and then got back up at like 3 a.m. in the morning and started working again, and which started a routine where over the next 35 days, I did not sleep probably more than 4 hours a night, 3 to 4 hours a night. So day two, I wake up around 3 a.m. again and I start working. And like by noon, midday, I'm convinced that, I'm about to become the greatest mathematician in the world and the most famous person walking on the world, at least for a while, because I was sure that I was going to solve the Riemann hypothesis. That's how it all started. Like the tiles that I've showed you before, I just got convinced that those were the key to solving the Riemann hypothesis. which I'm still working on. I might have actually solved it, not with my tiles, but at the time that was my goal. It was all encompassing. And so I was just manic is all hell. Later on that evening, to the best of my memory, I claimed my first taken name, which is Apollonius of Westchester, and I found my first muse. That is the man who I named myself after. Uh, his name is Apollonius of Perga. You can look him up. My name is Apollonius. I just took out the I. He's one of the most famous mathematicians in the world, and I claimed his name because I was going to be the most famous mathematician in the world anyway. I was a geometer, and his title was the Great Geometer, and nobody has claimed that title in 2,500 years. So I did. And that is the first muse I found, and one of the greatest. That is a singer songwriter named Nikki Heaton, and I posted that screenshot because Bad Intentions is probably the song that she is most known for, the one that you all would probably have heard on the radio the most, like whatever, 5 years ago or whenever it came out. But that song is how I found Nikki. You got to remember, I was manic 20 hours a day, just lightning flashing through my brain. At the end of the day, God needed some way to turn my brain off. And so she would stick that song and the next one I'm going to show you in my face over and over and over and over until I would finally get drowsy and go to sleep. Also, another thing about Infinity, other than it's a very good song and everything, just the lyrics. If you put any name in the world in the lyrics, and you'll know what I'm talking about, except my name, you can construe it or um, however you want to. But if you put my name into that song, it should be absolutely terrifying to you. All right, and then the next song that you gave me, also as like a lullaby, is actually a song named "A Lullaby" by Nikki. But I have to admit, back in the day, it was Infinity was the one that put me to sleep over and over. Not so much Lullaby. In a lot of ways, days 2 and 3 kind of meld together. But so now we're going to be in day 3. And the next Nikki video that I found wasn't even a song, it was just a video from her website. And this is it. Now, what Nikki calls detox, I call rock bottom. And so I naturally gravitated to that or could relate with that. And the video both made me cry and sad and everything, but made me happy for her as well, especially as I was learning more and more about her through song. I didn't really like Google her or anything, but um, yeah, I knew I really, really, really liked her. And if Nikki he never watches this video, for what it's worth, little sister, I'm glad you made it. Uh, you talk about, basically 40 days of darkness when you were going through that. And I can relate. And all I can say is, yeah, the first 40 days after rock bottom are always the hardest. The first 40 days of Persephone's journey, you might call it, are always the hardest. So, for what it's worth, um, I'm glad you made it, and I'm a huge fan of yours. And that was the video that I found of Nikki's on day 4 in the morning, which started my day of, you can call it really nothing but my day of vanity. And here it goes. So I found that video in the morning of day 4, and I listened to it a lot on repeat for a continuous amount of time for stretches. And I came to the conclusion that I was just the greatest human being that ever had walked the earth. And so I'm gonna like tell you this fantasy or narcissism story on a couple different levels, social and mathematical. So here's the social part. All right, the social part. Like, I was convinced I was going to solve the Riemann hypothesis like any day now or whatever. And in doing that, you're going to be automatically the most famous mathematician on the earth, one of the most famous mathematicians ever. You're going to be the most famous person on the earth. You're going to get the Millennial Prize, $1 million. You're going to win a Nobel Prize. You're going to get another $1 million. Like, I was going to be famous. I was going to sell the house, buy a mansion, have a harem of just like smoking hot brunettes, get some really cool cars, just live that baller lifestyle that like everybody wants, you know? All right, from the mathematical side, I was going to solve the Riemann hypothesis. I was going to be the greatest mathematician that ever walked the earth. I'm clicking on these guys' wiki pages and just like wrong, 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 kind of right, but still wrong, just feeling like the smartest being that's ever walked the planet. And here is like one of my first, what I would now call prophetic visions, but at the time it was just like daydreaming, imagining, or whatever. And so it's like metaphorical. It's like a basketball practice or like that. And I'm like divine LeBron James, shirt off, chest glistening, just looking like $1 trillion. All right. The other people on the court are Carl Friedrich Gauss, Bernard Riemann, and Leonard Euler. But they're like wearing like 1950s style basketball stuff with like the headbands and the short shorts and the pulled up socks and everything. And not even playing on the sideline is um, David Hilbert. And David's just like, I shouldn't picked 1,000 years. And I'm like, no fucking shit, David. No fucking shit. And so, like, it was just like a repeating vision or whatever, where the three would get out on the court. I would just drive the lane and then, like, tomahawk dunk. Um, the backboard would shatter. Um, Riemann and Gauss and Euler would go flying back like cartoon characters, like into the nurse's office. It's all bloodless, but then like the backboard would come back, the basket would come back, they would come out of the nurse's office, and everybody would get set up again. And then like one of the three is like, this isn't fun. We don't want to do this anymore. And I instantly say, I don't give a fuck what you guys want. This is daddy's night. And just the same shit happens again and repeat. It was like the height of narcissism. That's the only way I can describe it. It was so fun though. It was so fun. That night was so fun. And so begins day 5, the day I became a prophet and the day I met God. And I'm going to do this 2 different ways. I'm going to do it from my perspective and from God's perspective. And it's just because she wants me to do it this way. But they both start out the same. So the morning of day 5, I woke up early again, like 4 o'clock. Went downstairs and started making myself coffee in my little Keurig because it was COVID still. And I started continuing to put up stickies on a theory, whatever you want to call it. It comes up in the future that I called Olivia's theory. A bunch of stickies on the wall. All it really is prime numbers. Here, I'll just show it to you so you can look at it. Okay, firstly, it's just a bunch of prime numbers. All it is prime numbers in base 12. Number two, just for the record, that is not what Olivia's theory looked like on that day in day five when I first completed her. And it's not what she looks like now. It's just what she looked like on April 4th, 2021, Easter Sunday, for a short amount of time. Okay, and now here's the split between my perspective and God's perspective. All right, so I'm standing in front of Olivia, or Olivia's theory. I just completed it. I don't know, it's probably still early in the morning. And I'm just sitting there with my coffee and thinking about the night before and everything. And I realized in that moment that, like, I don't want all that stuff. Like, it's just stuff that I perceive that all of you think that I would want if I was rich and famous and stuff. And I realized I didn't want that stuff. And I just kept, like a checklist. I went down. I mean, I want enough money to live and everything, but I have no will to be the richest person in the world. And then I'm like, the harem of brunettes sounds fun, but I mean, I really only need one good girl, you know? Angie and I were on the outs then, but even then, I would admit she was the best girlfriend I ever had, and I still loved her and everything. We just were kind of on the outs at the moment. And then the mansion, no, I don't really want a big house with a bunch of rooms that I can't fill with stuff because I don't really have all that many material possessions. And then the cars, I have a really cool car. I have a 2018 Mustang. It's one of those eco ones. For you car people that know, I was never a Mustang guy, but I saw it, and most Mustangs are like V6, automatic, naturally aspirated, and it's a V4, but it's turbocharged and it's a stick shift. So it's like a giant go kart, and I love it. So, um, in that moment, I just kind of realized that all the things that I had been fantasizing about the previous night were things I didn't really want. And for an instant, that gave me relief, but then I started getting paranoid and thinking, like, then why am I getting so smart so fast? This whole story is, yeah, it kind of seems like a flowers for Algernon thing, but it kind of is. And so at the time, I just didn't understand why I was able to, solve all these problems that I could never have solved before in my life. And I could only break it down logically into three categories. All right, my first category was brain tumor. And that screenshot is from the movie Phenomenon with John Travolta. Kira Sedgwick is in it too. Robert Duvall, if I remember as well. It's a good movie. It's ultimately a Flowers for Algernon remake, and it's about a guy with low IQ, like a Forrest Gump, that has an experience, and it doesn't. The movie doesn't kind of makes it seem like it could be alien or religious. And he starts getting really smart, stops sleeping, develops abilities like telekinesis, and helps out his friends and everything. But end of the movie, spoiler alert, what they find is that he has a huge tumor in his head, which probably was the beginning of his learning disabilities in the first place, but that it had grown like a hand over time into his brain, and thus has stimulated parts of the human brain in conjunction that no other human being had ever developed, hence his hyper intelligence and telekinesis and stuff like that. But he ultimately dies in the end. But that was my second worst case scenario, that I had this giant tumor, you know, growing in my brain that was making me really smart, but it would eventually kill me. And I was just hoping that hopefully it wouldn't be too painful. So that was scenario number one, although my second worst case scenario. Hell yeah, they were my worst case scenario. Let's just put it this way: aliens are known for abducting people, and they're also known for probing people, and they're notoriously known for anally probing people. And while I'm not a homophobe, neither is God. Let's put it this way: shorthand, I mean, it's hard enough to find love in this universe. You know, it's hard enough and everything. That being said, like, ass play just ain't my thing. So my worst case scenario was, I was thinking Endgame, it was just going to be turned into alien ass play, or what some of you these days might call ancient astronaut ass play. But that was my worst case scenario, that this whole thing was going to turn into alien ass play. Which left me with God. And if you've seen some of my other videos, you should know that up to that point, even with all the mania upon me, I was still a terrified agnostic of God. I hated God. For some reason, I thought that God wanted to kill me, like he killed my parents, and I was just terrified. Um, but in that moment, I thought, you know, hopefully, if it's not a tumor thing or an alien ass play thing, and it is a God thing, at least I can get some resolution about why my parents died. And then in the next instant, that's when it happened. I got hit with the lightning bolt. I heard the booming voice, and it said, Michael, I am God. I am Allah. I am Yahweh. You shall be my prophet. And I instantly agreed. And now you may be asking yourself, if you were such a self proclaimed God hating agnostic, God hating, God fearing agnostic, why did you agree so quickly? And all I got to say is, like, you got to see it from my perspective. That was the height or the end of COVID, or close to the end, but it was still COVID. It was like max COVID when we'd been cooped up the longest. So I lived in shitty COVID world. I was on the outs with my girl. I just explained the three scenarios that were running through my head, and God was like the best case scenario. And so that's why I agreed. At least I was going to get some closure, even if it was all a joke and God was this evil God and was going to kill me or smite me down. Then it was the greatest opportunity for him at the time, or it. And, but at least I would get some closure on my terms. That's why I did it. But I did it so quickly and completely and honestly that it shocked God. And this is like one of those points in the story where it intersects between the two. It'll make more sense when I tell you the version from God's point of view. But I did it so quickly, I shocked God. All right, as long as this video is, she wants me to be complete, so I will prophetically ramble a little bit. He who shocks God. All right, one of my many, many, many names is Israel, which means he who struggles with God. Jacob was the OG. Moshe, even though nobody calls Israel's number two, I'm number three. But he who struggles has a lot of connotations, as does mine, but I have some specific ones, and one of them is not he who shocks God, but he who surprised God, or he who can surprise God. I did it a couple times. Um, my other one, my notorious one, is He who occasionally interrupts God. It's only ever happened once, but it's a funny story on its own, but for another day. So I'm standing there, newly minted prophet, and God is as flabbergasted with a mortal as she has been in a very long time. And all she says to me is, "You are the weirdest prophet I've met in a very long time." To which I instantly said, "I'm okay with it if you are. At least it ain't alien ass play." And then God just not like snorted, but like, "You were so fucking weird." All right, and now the same scenario from God's perspective. I know this is a long video, but it must be done this way. I am commanded so, and it is pretty funny. So here we go. All right, as juvenile as it sounds to metaphorically see this from God's perspective, you got to think of it like as a modern dating app. And she has been looking for a Mashiach so that her children can have their Geula, aka redemption, peace, utopia for a long time now, but she just hasn't been able to find the right Mashiach. So she logs on her cosmic Mashiach finding app or Mashiach dating app or whatever you want to call it. And she does the first thing she always does. It's an app that has, three main qualities you're looking for. And since the dawn of time, that's what she's been looking for in a Mashiach. And so she types those in and presses search. Unfortunately, that is what they call the Mashiach fuckboy. And just as regular fuckboys, Mashiach fuckboys are good for one thing, but they're not really good at anything else. So to be realistic, she just types in two boxes, and this is where the story gets interesting, because just as with, like, I guess some of your guys' dating apps, I don't do it that much. Bumble in the past for a very short time, but there's an area for like intangibles, and for all you girls or women out there, it's kind of like things that you dated a guy and you didn't know that you liked until he actually did those things. And it didn't work out. You guys still broke up and everything, but it was just like little features about him that you liked that if you notice them in a future guy, it's definitely a positive. So again, the dating app has the three, main things that you're looking for, your needs, wants, whatever, but the main three. But then she had 12 intangibles that from failed Mashiachs in the past, failed prophets in the past, that little fine points that she liked about him. And so what she did was she only picked two out of the three mains, and then she started experimenting with combinations of the intangibles. Well, real fast, like a lot of you learn that the three mains are kind of like the three mains because they're mains for a lot of people. Um, and intangibles are somewhat subjective and everything. Everybody's got their own proclivities and whatnot. But she found the proclivities are rarer than the mains. So she found out really quickly that even with two of the mains, that even different combinations of the 12 intangibles, like she was coming up with like zero results if she had more than like two of the mains and two intangibles. So then logically, she did exactly what you think she did. She took one more of the mains off and then started searching different combinations of one main with intangibles, but still, getting three is tough. 4, statistics go down. You know, she didn't find all that many combinations of one main and just a couple intangibles that looked good. Then she did all the different combinations, all the 2s, all the 1s, and just, yeah, statistically, it just didn't work out. And then finally, she did. As crazy as it sounds, for maybe the first time in a very long time, she clicked off all 3 of her needs, her wants, and clicked all 12 of the intangibles, and then clicked search. And there was only one result that came up, and you're looking at them. And then Gaia, God, the Lord, Allah, Hashem, looked at me and said, no fucking way. From God's perspective, and to use a lot of mixed metaphors here, she felt sorry for me. Like, she looked at me and said, like, I'm glad he lost a lot of weight and that he honored his mother and father, and he's met some people that he really likes and everything, but he also is a God-hating agnostic. She's like, he hates me. And, you know, she's like, when she looked at me, she thought, all I'm going to do is get this man killed. Either he becomes Mashiach, which is like 1 in a gajillion, or I get him killed and basically I fulfill his self-fulfilling prophecy of getting killed by God. And lastly, the other thing she worried about was just the act of turning me into a prophet. She was pretty sure was going to kill me. And that's because she was pretty sure that I was going to fight her. Becoming a prophet is kind of like being on your hands and knees and not being waterboarded by God, but kind of being tortured by God with water. You're on your hands and knees, and it's kind of like first starts out as like a spray, a mist, and then it turns into a regular hose stream, and then it turns into like buckets of water, and then it turns into a waterfall. And this is all while she's saying, you shall be my prophet. And it's when people fight her that the water gets higher and higher, waterfall, sea, ocean, until like you eventually agree. Once she has decided that you will be a prophet, you will, whether you want to or not. It's like the most non-consensual part of the process. So that hating her so much and blaming her for my parents' death, that was her fear, is that she would eventually hit me with an ocean and just turn me into nothingness. But that's not what happened, and this is where the 2 stories mesh together again. Like I said, it was just like a spray mist, like pixie dust that sprayed on me, and I instantly agreed to be her prophet. So she turned off the waterworks with just this like shocked face. And all she could think to say was, you are the weirdest prophet I've met in a very long time. To which I instantly said, I'm okay with it if you are. At least it isn't alien ass play. To which she didn't snort. She just, you're so fucking weird. And that finally concludes my longest video ever, the day I became a prophet. Like I said, it's the first 5 days of the 36 days. So 2 more videos upcoming. But I'm kind of exhausted after this one. So I'm going to sign off. And as always, rule number one, do not touch each other without another person's consent, aka do not hurt each other. And rule number two, it's all about honesty. Lies are ticked down, aka try not to lie. All right. God loves you all very much. I love you all very much too. And I will talk to you later.